Hi, Leon. I'm so glad you're here today, and I'm glad you could make it. Yeah, life throws us curveballs, and then we have to catch them and carry on with them. But I'm so happy you're here
Yeah,
today.
back in operation. Let's see how we go. Yeah, very delighted to be here. I think this is an incredible, invigorating, inspiring conversation that's unfolding. I think we have covered so much so far. It feels like we've covered so much, and yet we're only now at episode 3. So there's so much more to go.
Yeah. So I'm going to put you a little bit more on the spot today because this episode is about, it starts off with Ada's family. So what is your take on it? What is it that you observed?
Well, as I said last time, what intrigues me, and that's just the way I look at things, which might be different from how you look at it, I always like to look at what are the headlines of the newspaper? Well, what is happening in this episode as an overview? And then from there, it's easier to go into the more detail. Well, this is scene and then the next scene and so on. So I like to have that overview. And this time I did it again. And it's quite interesting how the themes that just stands out as a progressive narrative of the episode. For me, the first thing is I noticed that Toprak, the artist, is now back on stage. So he made a comeback. So a very emotive song that he's singing, and it pulls a lot of energy into the episode. Ada returns to the village, the holiday village, to rejoin with Sevgi and Layla. So that's kind of surprise. She's back. Toprak wants to reconnect with Ada, but she plays a hard-to-get game. And for me, it's interesting. Maybe we can come back to this pattern in relationships, where the one wants the relationship more than the other, and this perpetual game that unfolds sometimes in relationships, which we can talk a little bit more about. Interesting that Sergei is now standing up to the mother for the first time, and she just declares, "I'm not a kid anymore, leave me alone." So very kind of robust statement in the mother's face.
And this is key. Sorry, I'm interrupting you. And this is
please
key
do.
Because she now is standing in her own power. She now feels stronger, and she's now following, I want to find a man that I love, and nobody's going to tell me that I can't do it. So she's got Layla, the one who is keen on getting her friend into a loving situation, and then we've got the mom who is like, doesn't know what's really going on, is really happy that Sevgi is getting better and feeling healthy, but has got the understanding that Sevgi has this, I want to have a man in my life. But we also start to see how the mother is starting to put the brakes between her and Zaman. There is like, she doesn't quite trust everything anymore. Although she still does all the things, but she's starting not to trust him too much. But so that is also going to start creeping in from one episode to the other. We see that more and more. Yes, but it's also beautiful to see the three friends on, again, how they now are there for each other. And Toprak has no idea why Ada is playing hard to get. He doesn't know. And this is the thing, is she sits with her pain, she sits with her hurt, and she has not told him the real reason for why she is so mad at him.
Yes. And yeah, so we can go back to the detail, but I think that one of the things that happens in this episode as well is that Ada's buttons kept being pushed. You can almost see that the fruit is now ripening and it can drop from the branch, so to speak. But the buttons get pushed. One of the buttons is someone who says to her, and how's your hand? And then of course the question comes at the wrong time, and so on. So that's a definite turn in the episode as well, when that question drops in.
And then also she's back with her friends because she's disappointed with Selim and she now wants a divorce. So,
yes.
And this is where the things where she is like completely lost. She was secure in her marriage with Selim. She was mostly upset with Toprak, and nobody knows exactly why. Nobody knows what's happened, not even her friends know. But she now blames Selim for all his wrongdoing. So she wants to now divorce Selim.
Yes.
And then we have a lot of interaction between Selim and Sefki, who is their common friend as well.
Yeah.
And Ada has a pattern that everybody is mad at her about. When she gets into a tight corner, she runs. And that's her. If I look at it from our point of trauma, we all have different trauma patterns. And hers is when the cage gets too tight, she runs. So she ran from Toprak the first time. She's now running away from Selim, but she doesn't have an idea where she's running to. And now she's upset about her hand because she hasn't got a job. She's getting divorced, and her whole world is actually at this point a little bit messed up. And then we see the mother. What's her name? Sorry, I've lost her name. Muka. Yeah. So we see that she is like, these youngsters don't understand. It's a woman's duty to keep the family together and to protect it with her life. And so, but it's also her loss. She doesn't know. She's now the elder here between these girls, but it's also her not being able to keep it together. So, and now she's also having this internal fight.
Yeah. So what is beautifully displayed in this episode also is this perpetual drama caused by control and the unknown,
yes,
which the universe plays with us. And I think in the constellation that unfolds then around Ada, the facilitator is very clear about the scientific mind and the heart. So Ada wants to control with science. That's the only thing that she can trust. And she will not trust her heart because her heart has also let her down in the past. But you and I know that underneath all of this drama, there is a systemic pattern that actually is not about Ada, and it's not about Toprak, and it's not about Selim, but it comes from a different source. And this is, for me, the interesting part in this episode as well.
And also what makes it even worse for Ada at this point in time, the mother comes to visit.
Yes.
And she was not aware of it. And the mother comes to visit, and it's really important for us to bring the mother in because it just compounds Ada's problems even more, because she does not want to have contact with the mother. So if we look in the scenes as they play around, is she's got the mother that she doesn't want to have around, Selim, who she wants to now divorce, So there is nothing that's working for her right now. So it's like, what is she gonna, where is she gonna run? And this is the thing, is where can she run at this point? And so she's now starting to look at, and we see her looking at the book that was written by Mark Verlaine, which says it didn't start with you. And so she's starting to think, well, if it didn't start with me, then where is this? And so she asks the question, things stored in our subconscious do not get lost. So now she's basically forced to look at, right now where I am, nothing's working. So she's almost being forced to check in and say, all right, so if the things do not get lost, then they rather resurface in our lives as destiny of chance. And that gets her thinking. And that is also the question, is we don't remember what has happened in our family history because the information wasn't given to us. So it's in our DNA, but how do we remember? And then life pushes us to this point where we have to find the answer. And the answer is, it's there, but where is it? And then it goes on, pieces of traumatic events like words, images, or urges reappear in order to construct the secret language of the pain we carry inside. And I think it's the first time she's starting to understand, my whole world is falling apart. I can't deal with it myself. And what is it? She can feel the anger that's inside. And then the lesson is, when we connect the reasons behind our fears with the symptoms of our disorders, we open ourselves up to new possibilities for resolution. And that is really what this whole work is about, is the understanding that nothing gets lost.
Yes.
And I would always say, the universe remembers everything. Nothing gets lost. All the information is always available. And we just need to find a mechanism to get to it. And that's where Family Constellations is so beautiful, because it's a mechanism to get us into that lost memory, because it is there. And the reason why we do this work is to connect to our fears. What are her fears? Her fear is, now she still has a shaky hand. Her fear is her whole life has fallen apart. So she's like, and those are symptoms. And this is, I think, this is what is different in this work to any other work, is we deal with the symptoms.
Yeah.
And we never look at where is the origin of the symptom. And in most other therapies that I know, you always work with the symptom. And this one says, no, you need to go underneath the symptom.
That's right.
You need to resolve the origin of the pain. Only then will you find the resolution. So, but the resolution is not clear cut. It's not like a clear answer. We see that it comes often with a lot of new pathways opening up and a lot of more questions opening up. So we then go into other session, which...
Just before we go there, I just want to emphasize what you've said, because it's so beautifully described. I think it says the secret language of the pain we carry inside. So maybe that's probably the most descriptive sentence of this work. So I think that, so the work constellation work or systemic work is probably best described as allowing us or grabbing our attention so that we can truly listen and then translate these pain points, these symptoms, as you describe it, translate this secret language into, so we say, healing messages or healing sentences, as we like to call it. So when we get to that point when the secret language can be translated to a healing sentence, then I think we're on the cusp of the healing moment.
Yes.
And so I really like the way that this unfolded in this episode to bring us to that understanding that we need to find a way to listen deeply to the pain. No longer can we ignore this. It's in our face. Let's work with this now and help the client to find a way to turn this into a healing moment.
Absolutely. And the thing is, if we didn't have this work, so many other possibilities would have come into play. But with this work, we get a panoramic view from above, and we get a whole picture view of what is really underneath all this. And she is just focused on one thing now. I need to get my hands stopping from shaking because I need to work. I've lost my job. Now I need to work. So the only thing that will help me get my life back together is to stop my hand from shaking. And that's the only reason that she sort of goes into this constellation, the desperation. Again, we see it, the desperation. But earlier in the car, while she's driving, you can hear the frustration where she says, I've been in this cab for 10 years.
Yeah.
And so she links the fact that she's been caught directly to when she walked away from Top Rock the first time. So there's that anger with Top Rock, but that anger has nothing to do with the hand. And I think I want to make it clear. Those are two completely different issues in her life. And the one doesn't have anything to do with the other. But as you said, she then is angry with Zaman and says, you give people false hope. And it's almost like, I want to do this, but you give people false hope. And I don't want to have false hope. I want a guarantee. And the thing is, there are no guarantees.
Yeah. And she says, no, she will pass on the session first. And then he looks at her very patiently and he says, are you not tired of this fight?
Yes.
In other words, this fight between science and other ways of helping people. You know, science and the heart. Are you not tired with this fight? Because you're always fighting. Is it not time now to let go and really look and listen deeply to that which is bothering you?
Yeah, and then no sooner do they step into the field and he asks her the question about the possible murder in her mother's family. And we see the scene of the field of poppies, which has been in her dreams and in her nightmares, or in her dreams, she always has had the scene of poppies, which is quite interesting because it is just something she's drawn to on a subconscious level without having a realization that there is a deeper meaning for her behind that. And then we have the scene of this young woman that is being abused by
Sarah, yeah,
a group of
yeah.
soldiers, Zera, yeah, and in the father's belief system or in the family's belief system, she is now dishonored.
Mm.
So the real underlying theme here is the father, what he had to do to save the honor for himself and his family.
Mm.
And for me, that is extremely significant. Maybe also from a personal perspective, how
Mm-hmm.
people have to do whatever they can to save their honor, to save
Mm.
how people see them, to save how they can function forward in life.
Mm.
Because if your community dishonors you and throws you out, then you lose your sense of belonging.
So sometimes there's the one that by force needs to be excluded for the sake of the larger community. As he says, I can't take you with me like this. Even if I let you live, the others won't spare you. So it's like, I need to kill you because that's protecting you for your future abuse, but also it will protect the rest of the community. And it's a very interesting time frame, of course. Um, uh, yeah, there's lots to say about this because it's still in modern times. A lot of that plays out, I suspect.
It brings me to the question, what would I have done? And so we
Mm.
can't really judge the decision this man must make at that point in time.
Mm.
It was circumstantial. It was out of his control completely. It was out of the child's control completely. And the only one in control here is actually the belief system that he has to follow.
Mm.
And that is
Yeah.
really key when we look at our entanglements, not only in the family, but in the world around us that defines us, by which we are defined, and that pushes us into spheres of our lives that we can't comprehend.
Yeah. Isn't that hand tremble on the trigger a beautiful metaphor for the ambiguity that he goes through at that moment?
Yes,
He's facing his beautiful young daughter. How can you possibly kill, shoot your daughter? And yet, there's another judgment in himself that has to do this because that's the best solution that he can come up with right now. And often in systemic work, I think we discover that this sentence, I, I didn't know better, or that was the only option for me at the time. This comes through from time to time.
yes. And the thing is, it changes the understanding on the conflict he actually had inside of him. And now we
Mm.
see how that conflict relates to Toprak in terms of the heart and the head that can't get
Yeah,
together.
yeah, and to Ada,
Yes,
and how the Ada's trembling is also caused by that foundational systemic source
yes.
of origin.
So although they're two completely different themes in her life, how they are one theme.
Mm.
And the thing is, they're two different symptoms, may I call it that, which have
Mm.
one common core pain area.
Mm.
And then the beautiful sentence is, for years, I've been carrying this burden with you, but now it's become too much for me to bear.
Yeah.
She has to release that burden. But I promise I'll do great things for you. And I think that I promise I'll do great things for you is why she studied to become a medicine woman, is
Yes.
on the subconscious. I am going to make you proud of me, because in this case, the other self is Zera, and who's had to give and lose her life. And when the emotion and the mind is brought in as two separate people, we can see how that real conflict plays with each other. And because it was the father that pulled the trigger, that's how the wound is on the male side, although it was in her mother's family. So it's really important to know that it was in her mother's family, but it was on the male side in her mother's family. And then where Zaman says it's important to see the damage it does to you when you shut off your emotions. And if I put myself into the father, I would not have been emotional after that. It's the only way I would have coped going forward in life. I mean, just imagine. I have to kill my daughter. I'm saving my reputation, but inside, I need to shut down because I no longer can be emotive to the outside. And
But yeah,
when we see that, we understand Ada's mother better. All right.
very interesting how Ada persistently say, no, never happened. It never happened. Never happened. And eventually, then it's again the friend, Sergei, that says, but you remember those nightmares that you had? And remember these poppies that came up in your dreams and how you shouted out early in the morning when you had these dreams. And then with that, something reconnects in her memory. And then also with that, the mother phones back and gives her a bit of information that then let her relax into accepting that there's possibly this whole unfolding. But what I really like is how the series takes the viewer onto a progressive revelation of facts. You know, it's not given to you in one scene. You get a little bit here, and then you get mesmerized and deeper drawn into it, and then there's something more. And progressively, it takes you deeper. And as we would now see into the rest of the episode and what follows.
Yeah. And but the thing is, what was very interesting for me is her direct conflict between the two men in her life, where Celine feels completely left out. He does not feel needed. And he's at a loss, which we in future episodes see that is his issue. But in his relationship with Ada, this issue is pushed to the front. And then Toprak is the one who says, I want to get closer, but something is holding me back. And he doesn't understand her terrible, terrible anger. And yeah, so it is so sad when I take it into real life and I look at people and they've got this conflict in them and we don't understand. How are we going to solve it? How are we going to solve it with coaching? We can't. How are we going to solve it with any other therapy? We can't. And I love that is so clear in this constellation. that is the core of her problem. Her anger, the hurt that she's trying to run away from, and then Selim, who actually has no place in her life, who's just there so that his wounds are taken care of and her wounds are taken care of. So if we look from a relationship point of view, how can this marriage ever survive? There is no foundation for survival in this marriage. And I think it's important to realize that we often are in relationships for the sake of them, but not because they give us that inner fulfillment, the heart fulfillment that we actually all want.
Would you also say that sometimes in these relationships, it's clear that they have chosen each other on a subconscious level as catalyst for the growth? But once that growth is revealed and they understand what's going on, it's almost like there's no real reason for the relationship to continue, and therefore it dissolves. I don't know, what's your take on that?
My question is there growth, or is there just an expression of the wounds? And is the relationship came together because he knew if he kept Ada happy, he could heal her wounds. That was his aim. And that was his purpose. And so it was very clear for him right from the word go. And for her, it was, this is my safe space. He's never going to leave me. And therefore, I'm going to be okay here. So it is a relationship where we are together because we serve each other. So it's more a serving each other. And then the serving becomes too painful. His intention was never to have that outside attention. He wasn't. His intention was to always be truthful. But the pressure cooker in his marriage got too much. And for Ada, it is a case of, now that you have betrayed me, my wound is back. So you didn't protect my wound. You said you were going to protect my wound, and you didn't. And that's the betrayal. The betrayal is not him having an affair. The betrayal is that he did not protect her wound. That's her anger. And so
brilliant insight.
He no longer could serve her because he didn't protect her. So so we are looking at it in a deeper way, and we're looking at it in a more, I would say, holistic way, because we're not just looking at the symptoms of the marriage. We're looking at how did this marriage come together, and then when is the pressure cooker going to bring up the wounds? And I have a saying that when we're in relationships, the reason the relationship doesn't work is because our childhood wounds come to the surface. That's one way of looking at it. It's because that inner child needs to dance, that inner child needs to play out. And whatever was not given to the inner child at a time when the child was in a family home, he or she now requires from the marriage. And that's not possible. Nobody can feed the need of the inner child. And so we need to look at relationships differently, as we can see here.
Yeah.
And then Zaman says, for too long, there has been a war between your heart and your mind. And you refer to it right when we start. And then she does her normal thing. What is her normal thing? She runs. And then it changes into the last scene in where Erdem all of a sudden comes back on the scene. And he follows Layla and he catches her in the alleyway.
Yes.
She now also has to keep a secret because nobody's allowed to know that he's around. And she plays it so cool and nobody must find out. And the tricks she gets up to make sure that nobody finds out that he's around.
Yeah, she's this social media expert, and she walks around with this facade of the social media expert that solves Fico's problems in his restaurant for him, so that she has a mask behind which she can play this act, this secret. So yeah, there's a lot of secrets coming through here, which we often encounter in this work. But what's very interesting also is that that the little boy is a kind of a trickster, luring her into the ocean to find out if she's really afraid of swimming. And then she discovers that, she actually could do it. For me, that's such a lovely light moment in the episode as well, where she can share that with the rest of her friends. This friendship is such a solid, trusting friendship. They can shout at each other, they can reprimand each other, and eventually they turn into the friendship and the trust again. So it's lovely to observe that.
Yeah, but I often have people ask me, why do we want to go into the past? Why don't we let the sleeping dogs lie? And I think we've answered some of the questions. But the real answer is because the buried past always repeats itself in new generations. And I don't think that we are aware that whatever is not completed in one generation goes into another generation. So here we're not talking about past lives. We're talking about the entanglement in the family system and the system that wants to be whole. And anything in the system that is not whole needs to come forward in future generation in one form or another. And what would be a good form? Repetitive patterns. That's the only way we can actually, that's the way the system speaks to us. So I think this is, and I'm just getting it as I'm speaking here, is that the system speaks to us and we need to listen. So the repetitive patterns is the system saying, hang on, haven't you done this before? Do you really want to carry on doing this? Why are you repeating this? What's happening? And sometimes we don't realize we're repeating something because we're so in the moment, we can't see it. But this is the thing is, we see the negatives in our lives as a problem. Why is my life falling apart? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? So when the system speaks to us, we now need to use this vital tool for survival, because those have been before us and have already moved through the darkness, as in Ada's case, the father that has to shoot his daughter. He's left in a very dark place. So he needs to find his way out of that dark place. And everybody that's in the family system that's stuck in that dark place, we need to find our way out. And so the symptoms that we experience are the messages for us to say, I need to find a way out. I can't do it by ignoring the past, because if I do it by ignoring the past, the wheel keeps turning. Same old, same old, same old. So we are forced in one way or another to accept the past. And once we do that, and this is the beauty about a constellation, once we go into that accepting what has happened through what you said earlier, the healing sentences, through the awareness of what happened there, then the new feelings become the present. We can either stay in the presence of the darkness of the past, or we can heal through that darkness and come into new presence. A presence that's going to work forward for us.
Yeah.
And then our feelings change. And then the question is, could our future then change?
Yes. That's beautiful. It opens up a new possibility, a whole new possibility.
Yeah.
But we need to listen to the secret language, and we need to accept the feelings as they are, which then unleash in us the capacity to see and feel differently in the present.
Absolutely. And that's the shift that's created. Because our body, if we look at it from the body that has there's the past, that memory system that's been in the body, now the body gets new information. And in the neuroscience, they talk about the plasticity of the brain. With new information, new synapses are being formed in the brain. And then we can perceive the world in a new way. And our present then becomes new. And that's my understanding.
Yep.
How we change, how the future changes. We don't change the future, but when we experience life differently because of the new synapses that firing, new information, new life, different future. I love
Infinite
this work.
possibilities.
I love this work.
Yeah. Anything more?
I think we've covered everything.
I think we did. Yeah. Somehow a very packed episode, because there was quite a lot happening in this episode. We covered it quite succinctly today.
Awesome. So Leon, thank you so much for being here with me again today, and
Thank
for
you.
having this conversation, because you always prickle my mind, yeah, it's good to have this exchange and this conversation with you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sonja. Thank you.
And
Looking forward to our next time.
Looking forward to our next time. Awesome. Take care.
Okay. Thank
Bye.
you. All right.